Good morning. This is Jerry Lawrence, the chairman of the Delaware County Board of Elections, and we're calling to order today's meeting of the County Board of Elections. We're in a different room today. As you may notice, I am at the Government Center at the Courthouse and Media. However, the County Council room where we usually sit to conduct these meetings, and where in the last couple of meetings I've joined you from, is being used because it's a large open space to prepare materials for the election. So I am actually down in the Board of Elections office today. Poses the challenge that we don't have a flag to say the Pledge of Allegiance, but perhaps we'll stand and say the pledge without the benefit of the flag. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now that we've come to order, my fellow members of the Board of Elections, Mr. Byrne and Ms. Lunkheimer are present. You can see them on your screen. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Ashley.
Good morning. Sorry, I just was noticing the online screen is showing Manley, but then also Christine Ruther, who's talking to somebody. So I don't know if technology is. I don't see you, Jerry, on Facebook. And it's and Grace.
Yeah, perhaps that's for Phoenix Media. They can do something to adjust that to make sure we're showing the right screens. Well, hopefully at least you can hear me. And I actually just got a note. Ashley, perhaps you could explain to Phoenix what you're seeing.
If you go onto Facebook, I see Manley for some reason, exactly as he is. And I see Christine Ruther talking to Marianne Grace. They have two different boxes shown, but I don't see any of the rest of us.
Okay, I understand that on Facebook right now, we're actually speaking and communicating with Phoenix Media, who is the service provider that puts this together and makes it available.
But I don't see any of the rest of us.
He is attempting to adjust this, but as long as you can hear my voice, I think we'll continue with the meeting, and hopefully within a minute or two, this will be corrected. If it's not, let me know. Also with this, I understand that on Facebook right now, we're actually, Ms. Hagan and I are actually in the same room, and in an effort to socially distance, we'll move back and forth so that when she's speaking, she'll use the camera. When I'm speaking, I'll use the camera. And our solicitor, Mr. Parks, who I can actually see on mute, but he can wave to say hello, and he is here as well. Our agenda for today is to mostly be informative, to allow people to know what's going on with respect to the election. We have some public comment and questions to answer. I think probably some of these issues that we've already received the public comment and questions about, we may get to in the course of our meeting, but we will get to that. We do have one or two things we want to discuss and take a vote on. First of all, if you read the newspapers, you are undoubtedly aware of the tremendous amount of work that is being done by our. I'm getting a message here.
Jerry, I can look at the messages and help.
Okay, so Ashley will coordinate with our vendor to make sure we. Well, I guess you need to speak to him through this.
No, I'm going to chat. You'll just see it come up.
Okay, fine. As you can see, I'm not exactly the expert on this technology, so I'm glad that we do have people who are monitoring it. In any event, as I began to say, as you may be aware, there has been an extraordinary amount of work done in preparation for this election. Due to the recent legislative changes that have amended the way in which the election is conducted to provide for mail ballots, and due to the circumstances created by the pandemic, we have had an overwhelming response and request of absentee ballots. Our staff has been working, I'm tempted to say round the clock, and I don't just mean that in a figurative way, but they have been here till midnight and back at 5 and 6 in the morning every day of the week for the last couple of weeks. We have hired additional people. I can tell you from walking in here this morning, the bags are ready. They're hanging in the hallways. We have a ton of people putting together materials to get them out and have them ready to be picked up to go out to the polling places. There is this incredible amount of activity that you see in the context of every election that we conduct, but especially so now, given the pandemic and the additional concerns that it presents. Regarding the conduct of the election, as we discussed at our last meeting, things are going to be a little bit different at polling places. We're going to have combined polling locations. We are going to be voting for the first time in a very long time in this county on paper ballots. We are not going to deploy the precinct level scanners as we had intended to when the board last year purchased the equipment. We are going to bring ballots back and have them centrally counted here in media. We are making provision for the return of the mail-in ballots and the absentee ballots that are a little bit different about what's been done in the past. Obviously, mail-in ballots, everything to do with mail-in ballots is new. It's a new law for this year. I think it's important for people to understand what is going on with those ballots. We continue to receive requests as the law permits. The legislation that they passed permitted people to make requests for absentee ballots until Tuesday of this week. When we get those requests, we then have to process the request, print the ballot, mail the ballot, and the ballot has to be, under the law, returned back to the Board of Election by Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. As you might imagine, it takes some time to process requests, print ballots, and mail them. It takes time for the Postal Service to deliver them. It takes time for people to mail them back to us. The law is that those ballots, mail-in ballots and absentee ballots, have to be received in the Board of Elections by Tuesday evening, close of the polls. Now, as we've learned over the last couple of months in the COVID circumstance, things change. And there have been change after change after change, which has resulted in complications and a lot of work for our dedicated staff. There are the potential for more changes. So I don't want to confuse people here, but as the law stands today, your ballot, mail-in or absentee, has to be received in the Board of Elections by 8 p.m. on Tuesday night. If you mail it, that means the mail has to be received by the Board of Elections by 8 p.m. on Tuesday night. A postmark does not count. It has to be received here. If you haven't mailed your ballot yet, not that I'm an expert on the Postal Service, but it would be very difficult for the post office to deliver that within a day or two. Mail has not been running, in our experience, consistent with what mail may have been running prior to COVID. There are other options to return your ballot to the Board of Elections. You can drop it off at the courthouse. There are collection boxes that are permitted under the statute, and we have installed those at each entrance of the courthouse. And on the main entrance on Front Street, it's available during business hours, Monday to Friday. At the Government Center or the Annex entrance, which is on Orange Street, that box is available 24 hours a day, where you can drop your ballot off. Secondly, the statute, which permits collection boxes to be placed anywhere throughout the county, and we're going to have some discussion and probably a motion about this later. We, the Board of Elections, has the administrative authority to place those boxes at any location throughout the county. Obviously, there's concerns about placing ballot boxes at random places. There's been a decision made by the staff, and the board today, I think, is going to take some action to ratify that, to place collection boxes at each polling location. These will be the same heavy ballot collection boxes that are locked. They have a slot you slide ballots in that we'll be using to collect the regular ballots. We're going to collect mail ballots at your polling places. So your options to return your mail-in ballot, if you don't think you can mail it in time to get it to media, to be received by the County Board of Elections by close of business on Tuesday, you can drop it off at media, drop it off at your polling place. Now, I mentioned before things change. Please pay attention to the news. There are 2 court cases, one in the Commonwealth Court, one in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, where interested parties are seeking relief from the requirements of the legislation to permit counties to count ballots that are postmarked. That is not the law as we sit here today. That is not the requirement. As we sit here today, unless things are changed, your ballot has to be received at the Board of Elections by 8 p.m. on Tuesday night. However, please pay attention to the media. If there is a change in the law or the regulations as a result of these court cases, the Board of Elections will help to publicize that, and you may learn of that and become aware of it. If the law changes, we're going to follow the law. We're going to do either what the legislature says or what the courts tell us to do. But as the law stands today, the legislation requires that we have your ballot by 8 o'clock on Tuesday night for it to be counted. So you may ask the question, well, what if I never even get my ballot from the Board of Elections? What if I don't receive it? I obviously can't mark it and drop it off myself, can't mail it. What can I do? In that instance, you can go to your polling place and vote a provisional ballot. That's a procedure that has been in the law for a number of years. It's not a new procedure. Not many people have done it because it only normally comes into play when there's an issue with your registration and you're not in the polling books to vote in the normal manner. You essentially go to the polling place and you fill out a special ballot called a provisional ballot, and then there's an analysis done of whether or not you have a right to vote in that manner. So if you haven't received your procedure, not many people have done it. Mail-in ballot or your absentee ballot that you've requested, your name won't be in the poll book, and you'll have to vote a provisional ballot. That's what the law provides, and that's obviously what we will do. We will follow that direction. I think that about covers the information that we wanted to make available to the public today. Lorraine, do you have any reports that you'd like to make?
Sorry. Yes, just wanted to follow up on Mr. Lawrence's statements, and that is that we are still processing a handful, larger than a handful, of ballot requests, and they are going out. If you have concerns, you are also encouraged to call the Bureau of Elections. We do understand that there is a number of busy signals. We have many people here helping us answer them, but there are still more calls than there are people able to answer them. But we are trying to return as many calls as we can. I know I was returning calls up to at least, I think I was on the phone with someone at 10:45 last night. So we are trying to get that information out there and help resolve the issues that you have with possibly receiving those ballots. So please stay in contact with us, email us. It may not be an instantaneous response, but we will try to get back to you within a day. Okay?
And I can see the phone across the room here on Ms. Hagan's desk, and literally every line is lit up and blinking. And we do want to be responsive. We do want to help people, but recognize that infrastructure here was built and systems were designed not with a pandemic in mind and not with this kind of overwhelming request. And we have brought in staff and we have gotten additional equipment, but we are at capacity. And I apologize. I know people are concerned and they want to know what the status is of their ballot, and they're calling. We're doing our best. We're doing our best to answer the phone. We're doing our best to respond to you. There is a way that you can check the status of your ballot online on the Department of State's website, the Votes PA page, www.votespa.gov. You can go to there. You can see if your ballot was mailed. If you call here, you're essentially having us do the same thing. Look up in that system. It's called the SHORE system. It's a state-run system that we generate the ballots through. We essentially are looking it up just through a little bit different interface and giving you the same information. I know some people have issues with technology and prefer to use the telephone, but if you can use the internet to look this information up, it certainly helps us and allows us to use the limited resources that we have in the most effective way. We want to answer people's questions. It's just there's a crush that systems were never designed or anticipated to have this kind of demand. And obviously, like I said before, if you read the papers, you can see this is going on in all the counties throughout Southeast Pennsylvania. We have dedicated, hardworking staff who is doing their best, but doing their best in a circumstance that things were not built and designed for. So I think that it would be appropriate to discuss for a moment the issue of the mobile, not mobile, that's the wrong word, the collection boxes that are being deployed in the polling places throughout the county. And Manley, do you want to address what the law is about that and administrative decisions that were made? But I think we also want to consider perhaps the board taking action just to make sure it's clear to people that this is an appropriate place to vote.
I'd be happy to, Jerry. We have a new statutory system, as we've discussed in other meetings, thanks to a law called Act 77 passed the end of last year that introduced the concept of no excuse absentee voting, or what we call mail-in ballots, to distinguish them from excuse required absentee ballots, as we've always had in Pennsylvania, or for a long time at least. And in connection with that and with the subsequent amendment to that called Act 12 that pushed back the date of the primary and made some other changes to the provisions of Act 77 and other parts of the election code, the opportunity in the statutory scheme was created for county boards of election to create drop boxes for people to return their ballots. Not so the statutory scheme contemplates that a mail-in or absentee ballot could be returned in one of two ways, either delivered or posted by mail or delivered to the Board of Elections. And through guidance from the Department of State, we understand that delivered to the Board of Elections option includes the Board of Elections creating drop boxes for those ballots. Now, there are logistical considerations that the Department of State has requested that counties consider, like the security of those drop boxes. You don't want to just put some sort of cardboard box out on the street in front of the courthouse and not have nobody watching it for days on end and have people's ballots in there. Obviously, that's a security issue. So the Dropbox option has to have appropriate security protections in place. And it would be consistent based on the new laws and the guidance that we have from the Department of State to have mail-in return ballot drop boxes in polling places during Election Day for a couple of reasons. One, the Board of Elections is renting every single polling place space for the day. So that essentially becomes an extension of the Board of Elections for that day. And we're paying the staff of all of those polling places, the local boards of election, for that day. And they're actually swearing oaths and serving the Board of Elections as effectively Board of Elections employees for that limited day. Now, I'm not going to say employees in the legal sense, but certainly they're agents of the Board of Elections for that day for the purposes of conducting the election. And as such, it would be perfectly consistent with the statutory scheme and the guidance that we received from the Department of State to have these ballot boxes in polling places under the oversight of the local boards of election, and deem that ballots dropped in those boxes during the hours the polling place is open are in fact received by the Board of Elections within the requirements of the statute.
Okay, thank you. And I do understand the statute to permit the Bureau of Elections, the staff, to make the decisions about where to install these boxes and where to place these boxes. Obviously, we didn't take votes about placing boxes at the entrance to the courthouse, et cetera. But I think given the circumstances that people may have concerns about whether this is the right way to vote, I want to make sure we give clear guidance. And I was hoping to perhaps entertain a motion to affirm that decision to deploy the mobile. I don't know why I keep saying the word mobile. They're not mobile. They're going to be fixed. To deploy the additional drop boxes, one to be placed in each polling location, with the caveat that the boxes will be placed within the what's defined in the code as the confined space, the area of the room, specific room in which the voting is being conducted, and in a place such that the members of the local board of elections, the judge of elections, the inspectors, the clerk will be able to visually observe and keep an eye on these boxes, so we can see what's going on.
And Jerry, I would like to make that motion, and I do want to say some comments about it, but I could see Jim was leaning forward if he wants to.
I was just adjusting my pillow on my back. Sorry.
Okay. Then Jerry, I just want to say I think it's been very well explained why legally it's permissible and why it's an administrative decision. So in principle, this is more of a motion of support for the idea, I believe, but I so move as Jerry has declared. And I just want to say one thing for those who are watching, because this is really just the practical of what does it mean? What are we describing? And we're just simply the drop box is going to be similar to the box that is being used to handle your ballots for those who vote in person. It'll be the same. I mean, it'll be a different physical box, and it'll be placed by the door so that those who have concerns that their mail-in ballot will not be received through the U.S. Postal Service on time can have the minimum contact necessary to drop off that box. At the very beginning of these live meetings, I think we talked about the fact that there's no ideal decisions or circumstances under this pandemic for everybody to be happy with the way everything is being handled. But I do think that this board has continually, and the administration and the team has continually tried to facilitate the ability for everybody to vote and to vote as safely as possible under the circumstances. And so the Dropbox intention, I understand from the administrative team, is simply to provide another method for the public to have as minimum contact as possible, but to address the fact that we don't control the U.S. Postal Service, we don't control the mail, the legislature, we don't control the legislation that allowed the applications for mail-in ballots to be filed up until May 26th with an election on June 2nd, and the reality is of Postal Service delivery times. So please, for those listening, recognize that Jerry has described at length two very important opportunities separate from, well, in addition to the regular in-person mailing, in-person voting that is available to everyone at all elections. That is, in addition to being able to mail your ballot from your home, if you have concerns that it will not be received, there will be a box that you can have minimal contact, go in, drop it, leave inside the polling place. And the second is, if you do not have your mail-in ballot or it hasn't been received or you have similar concerns, then you can vote provisionally. And so those are other opportunities to try to facilitate making sure that everybody has the opportunity to vote in this election during this very difficult time. So for those reasons, Jerry, I support the motion that you suggest.
Thank you. Jim?
I don't agree, and I'm not going to second that motion, but I do have some comments. If somebody, Jerry, if you want to second the motion.
Yeah, I'll second the motion. I'll second the motion to open the debate.
Okay, I want to start out by saying I really appreciate the difficulties that we've had in this election, and I know that it's been, some new legislation. There's been new machines. There's new, a new scenario with this pandemic, and I give credit to all the administrative staff and Manley and everyone who's doing the work behind the scenes here. However, I think that we have a real problem here in there's two things we got to keep in mind, I think, in any election. One is having people have the right to vote, but then I think you also have to weigh the integrity of the vote versus their right to vote. There's always going to be times when people can't get to cast their vote. I mean, you may get stuck at work late one night, you may not get there. So you're never going to have a perfect election where you have 100% of the people there. We've taken some real drastic steps so far to try and make sure that this is open. So this new legislation allows mail-in at any time for any reason. It allows absentee ballots at any time for any reason. This board made a motion at the last meeting to approve and then send it, or at least recommend to county council that we pay 20 or 50 cents for each mail-in ballot, so that folks didn't have to even go get a stamp. So we're talking, if we're at about 85,000 ballots now, we're talking a cost of about $42,500 to the community. So it's not that I'm against the opportunity for people to vote. But these drop boxes, I mean, I haven't heard enough really about the security. The security, as I understand it's going to be a box that's similar to the other boxes. But I also understand that the box is going to be a box that can be, a ballot can be dropped from any precinct. So that if I live in Springfield and I decide that I want to drop my ballot off in Radnor, I can do so. I think that causes some real problems with security, the way that we're talking about this. I mean, we're first of all, we're combining all of these, we're combining a lot of these polling places. So what that's going to cause is you're going to have people, and from what I understand, we're having a problem even getting workers. In a normal election, when we go, we talk about going to the election and the box is the same. This is not going to be that, because in a normal election, you go there, you show, you talk to the people, they know who you are, you sign in, they know that the person who's casting the vote is in my case, it would be Jim Byrne. I say hello to the guy at the counter, and then I go in and sign in, and I go in and vote. Well, if these boxes are in different towns, different wards, different precincts, none of the Board of Elections is going to know it. How do we know that person who's dropping the ballot in that box is that person? I mean, as far as I know, the law is still that you can't harvest votes, and you can't deliver somebody else's ballot. The person has to deliver their own ballot. How in the world are we going to check that in so many spots? Now, with respect to the number of drop boxes, I mean, I've been looking, and I won't say I did an exhaustive search, but the towns where I see them adding drop boxes, we're talking about in Montgomery County, I think I read there were 5 drop boxes, and that drop box had 24-hour camera on it with security there. I mean, we're not talking about any of that here. I think the danger of the integrity of the vote far outweighs what we're doing here, and we're really going too far. And in fact, it brings me to another issue that, and it's related to this, is that, we sit as the election board and we make decisions. We're making decisions like this. And Jerry, I agree, there are administrative decisions and Ashley, same thing, and decisions that we need to make. But I'm concerned and actually offended a little bit at the way things are being handled. Not that anybody's not working hard, because I cannot comment how hard people are working, but the fact that things are appearing in the newspaper the other day and on the radio, actually. The other day I heard, I saw in the newspaper and heard on the radio that Delaware County was going to have these boxes at every polling place, as well as have a vehicle driving around to different places to pick up votes. Now, I know that that's off the table now, the vehicle, but it's just an example, as far as I'm concerned, of the slide that we're going to make this a 100% election, which it will never be. And I think we've got to protect the integrity of the election more than trying to make sure that every single person puts their vote in. You're just never going to attain that. And I don't think any of the founders or anybody considered that you're going to have 100% participation in any election. And then, I guess that's all I have to say on that issue right now.
Well, Jim, obviously, I appreciate your concerns and the thoughtfulness in which you expressed them. I too, have read things in the paper from some of our elected officials about they had various ideas and approaches to try to make voting as easy as possible, and I recognize that they were working to try to come up with solutions to make things better, but ultimately it is the Board of Elections, or in some instances the Bureau of Elections, that makes administrative decisions. And while members of the council can suggest things, we ultimately, either by a vote of the board or where appropriate under the statute by administrative decision, make those things happen. And other alternatives were discussed. I know you mentioned Montgomery County had installed these remote drop boxes in 5 locations. I understand that was looked into, and that what we're talking about in those instances are not the same type of boxes that we're going to be using. Those are like heavy metal boxes akin to perhaps a mailbox or something like that. We couldn't purchase those and have them manufactured and delivered in a timely fashion in order to use them for this election, which is why we don't have those. Physically, the boxes that we do have, they are a heavyweight plastic box that has a lock on it, and is not something that is going to be able to be accessed. It's going to be under the supervision of the local election officials in the polling place, so that it won't be able to be tampered with. Not that it ordinarily would be because of the construction of it, but it's not a metal box as you suggest, but it's still a box that has a restricted access that you can't access without a key. It has a slot to put the ballot in. The other issue that you raised concerning the identity of the persons dropping off the ballots, and Jim is correct when he says you can't harvest votes or go around and collect a bunch of mail ballots or absentee ballots and bring them in and drop them off. But you also can't go around and collect a bunch of mail ballots or absentee ballots and take them to a mailbox. The Board of Elections does not know once a ballot leaves here and goes to somebody whether they take it themselves personally to a mailbox and drop it off. And we have to trust that they follow the law and they do it. Now, the security check to that is, and those of you who may have voted absentee in the past or received an absentee ballot or mail-in ballot in this election know that there is a place on the ballot where you have to sign the ballot. And then there's a process where the signatures are compared to the signature that's on file with your voter registration. That's the legislature. That's what the legislature determined is appropriate. We follow the law. The legislature says you can send somebody a mail-in ballot or an absentee ballot, and they can take it to the post box and drop it in. It says that they can take it to the remote collection box, whether that collection box is going to be at the courthouse or whether it's going to be at the polling place. So I don't see that we are creating any additional security risk that doesn't already exist under the law by putting these collection boxes at the polling places. There's mailboxes all over Delaware County where voters receive their ballots and go and drop it in a mailbox. This is giving them another box. This box perhaps even being more secure because it's under the watchfulness of our dedicated judges and inspectors and clerks and machine operators that are in the polling place. So I do appreciate your concerns, Jim. I note your concern about the money that was spent regarding providing postage for these. As we pointed out at the last meeting, we are going to be able to apply to get that money reimbursed by the state and the COVID money. $40,000 is an extraordinary amount of money, but it's not a county budget item. It's ultimately going to be reimbursed by the funds that were made available to conduct this election from the state, and I think part of them from the federal government. I don't know all those details, but it's not something that's going to be county budget money. So I respect your opinions and I appreciate them, but I think I'm going to vote in favor of the motion.
Can I just respond, Jerry,
Sure.
very briefly?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll start out, I guess, by saying, elections are always hard. I mean, and you know that. You've been serving on the board for what, 15 or so years. I know that. Elections are always hard, and it's a lot easier to be the guy people that are out there throwing rocks at people and saying things are going wrong than the people that are catching the rocks, trying to put things in place. But having said that, I mean, we still have, I think we have a duty to protect the integrity of the election. And I just want to go back on some of the comments that you had there. I mean, the $42,000 for sure is a lot of money. And I know you agree with that. And yes, we can put an application in to get that money back from some other aid, whether it be state aid or federal aid. But that's still money that the taxpayer is paying. That money is not just being printed. I mean, that money is coming from somewhere. So I would be interested to know at the end of the day, of that $42,000 that's spent on stamps, how many are actually returned and how much money we actually lost. That would be something that would be interesting to know. In addition, with the drop boxes, I disagree respectfully with you with respect to first I disagree, and I don't mean to disagree with Manley's interpretation, because I think Manley does a very good job as a solicitor, and maybe my beef is with the legislature, or the way, and maybe it's our responsibility as a board to authorize us to do something. But I don't think the solution to the problems that we're perceiving with respect to not getting the ballots back in time is to put out all of these boxes. And, it doesn't make sense from a lot of respects. One is putting all these boxes out and having the people go up to the polling places, which are now combined with more people there already, and allowing people to go to any box they want and drop off a ballot is directly contrary to social distancing. The whole idea is spread it out and have less people. And then, with respect to the security, I mean, I just think it's a real problem to just allow people to come up, especially under circumstances where we don't have enough election workers and we don't have the boards that know people. And then finally, I mean, while I think it's good that we're getting some guidance from, the Department of State and those types of things with respect to the election, I don't know that that's really appropriate. I mean, to me, I don't know that the law is all that clear as to whether we can put out 280 collection boxes. And if we can't, then why don't we consider doing something like Montgomery County has done or Philadelphia has done, where then I believe there's even 11 other persons that have done it, and go to the courts and let the courts make the decision. Because while, it's great to get advice from Jonathan Marks, I don't know that I necessarily agree with Jonathan Marks. And I'd much rather hear from the Supreme Court telling us the solution is to put all these boxes out rather than extend the deadline. I just think there are less I don't know what I want to say, like or means that are not so fraught with the ability for people to harvest or put ballots in for other people. I just think we're going down a slippery slope that we don't want to go down.
Well, thank you, Jim. I understand your position. I know Ashley has a comment, but I also wanted to say you're correct too. Delaware County did not file its own case. Montgomery County filed its own case in the Court of Common Pleas. It was dismissed yesterday. There is a case in the Commonwealth Court. There is a case in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. I think Pennsylvania Supreme Court has the final word on Pennsylvania law, and even if we had filed our own case, soon we could get past the hurdles that those individual county cases that were dismissed were not able to survive. And I don't want to give people a law lesson, but there's issues about whether the courts have the jurisdiction in a county to direct how a state election is conducted. There are statewide elections on this ballot. There's also issues about equal protection, where you have seats like the 17th state Senate district, which is partially Montgomery County, partially Delaware County. How could one county conduct that election different than the county in the other half of the district? So Delaware County did not file an action. We understand that, and we are tracking the cases that are currently pending. And I, like you, Jim, I'm hopeful that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court rules that we can accept postmarked ballots, and that there will be very few ballots returned on Tuesday in these boxes, and that people will just drop them in the mail and preserve social distancing and all the good reasons that you pointed out. But in my judgment, we need this contingency available if things come to pass that people are unable to return their ballots in a timely way. So Ashley, I know you wanted to say something.
I think Manley may also want to say something. So Manley, I'll let you have the last word if you do. But I just want to say that we did, as Jerry mentioned, there was an exploration of the use of the drop boxes. And just for everybody, the administrative meetings are weekly, and everybody, Jim, Jerry, Manley, and I are invited to watch as the administrative decisions are being made. And so this was something that was made during discussions of this opportunity, and how to create greater voter access were available for all of us to participate in who are on the board. And so I just want to say that for you, Jim. I know that it's not always possible to make the meetings, but they did happen. And to me, and I respect what you're saying about all the efforts we've made, and I think I want to talk about the cost, because $42,000 is a tremendous amount. But I understood from the administrative meetings that, first of all, those drop boxes themselves are incredibly expensive, in the multiple thousands of dollars. And second, in order to secure them, because they're placed in a location for a longer period of time than when we have an election staff observing them, that the security costs would be tremendous as well. So there were a lot of considerations. I think it was well thought out by the administrative team as to whether or not to try to pursue that. And as Jerry said, it may have had an impossibility factor in terms of the manufacturing, but I think it would have been tremendously more expensive than having our poll workers who are overseeing on a local level the judges of election, and the other poll workers who are taking oaths and who are overseeing the in-person voting, to oversee that someone doesn't walk into a polling place with 800 ballots, and also they're secure in the sense that they're under their observation for the entire time that the election is open, as are all the other election items for in-person voting that they're in charge of. But more importantly to me, even if I were given the choice of choosing 5 boxes, or we do have the 2 at the courthouse, at the government center and the courthouse, but 5 additional boxes throughout the community, or 1 in every polling precinct that has been consolidated, but is in the local parts of the community where people vote. I think that in terms of accessibility to voters, being able to have drop boxes at all of those voting locations that are open and staffed is at least facilitating those people who may have trouble with transportation or other issues during this incredibly difficult time, to at least have access to the opportunity to drop off their ballot in a way that will ensure that it is counted. So I will let Manley speak to any of the other issues around the security, the legality, and anything like that. But I just think the goal of this, and the way I'm recommending, along with Jerry, to deploy it, is really to create as local access to the ability to vote as possible, and again, as safely as possible, under all of the circumstances that are so tremendously difficult. So I appreciate your views, but I am in support of him, and when Jerry calls a vote, I intend to vote in favor of this. But Manley, I can see that you have taken yourself off mute and may have more to say.
I simply wanted to note that I understand, and I don't know to what extent this is going to actually be rolled out, but apparently Montgomery County may be making arrangements to deploy additional drop boxes, perhaps as many as 50, which would be the ballot box type drop boxes we're talking about in this recommendation. on election day as well. So I just want to make sure that it's understood that that's at least being contemplated by Montgomery County. I haven't seen any serious statements of opinion by any parties that these drop boxes are not authorized by the law. I understand that there is a judgment to be made about the circumstances under which they can be kept secure, how much money should be spent on these things. I mean, if you're going to get the mailbox style drop boxes with video cameras and, set them in cement and bolt them to the sidewalk, that's a different economic proposition than taking ballot boxes, which were already part of our ballot box, and taking them out of the warehouse and deploying them as a second ballot box for mail-in ballots in the different polling places. So those are, to me, administrative questions and ultimately, from the economic side, policy questions for this board. And to the extent we're talking about economics, probably with some interaction with the county council who signs the checks or authorizes the funds. So I just wanted to note that, and I'm very comfortable based on the guidance that we have from the Department of State that this is permissible under the law. In terms of not intervening in these other cases that have been mentioned, I would simply note, one, that's a decision for this board to make and to direct the solicitor to file a legal action, and had not received that direction. But beyond that, I would note that based on what happened with Montgomery County, where they went and filed a case and it was dismissed immediately before the common pleas, I'm not sure that would have been a particularly fruitful avenue. And to the extent that there's going to be relief, there are already cases pending where the facts are being presented to tribunals in this Commonwealth, and those tribunals are being asked to consider these exact questions. And I'm not sure that it matters whether Delaware County is the advocate for this relief or simply a third party that's providing publicly available data about the status of ballot mail-out efforts and so forth. Either way, the facts are in front of a tribunal, and the determination is going to come down based on what that tribunal thinks is appropriate in terms of extending the deadline.
Jerry, if I could just follow up real quick, and I don't want to be making any chaotic speeches because I know I'm reading the tea leaves and I'm not going to succeed in my convincing everybody to my way of thinking. But in response to Ashley talking about the election team, and it was a good effort, and I'm not saying that it's not a good effort, but the election team is not the election board, and the election team is not the public, and the meetings are not public. They're not open to the public. They're open to the select people who are invited to those meetings. And with all due respect, and I know this board has been, trying hard to put politics aside, but it's one-sided in terms of how many people from one side or the other are involved in that election team. And that ties hand in hand with what I brought up originally with council as to, what is our role? I mean, should we just simply disintegrate and not be around anymore and let the election team and council make all the decisions? I mean, if they're going to go to the newspaper and they're going to go to the radio stations and say, this is what we're going to do, and then plop it in our laps and we just rubber stamp it, there's not really much for us to do. It's just a waste of our time. And I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. With respect to whether Montgomery County is or isn't going to increase it to 50 boxes, I mean, 50 boxes is a whole lot less than 238 or 280, however many we have. I don't even know what the exact number is. And I just think that the security, I mean, if we're talking about cost for a security box, I mean, from what I understand, those security boxes, and I could be wrong, but from when I was at one of those election board meetings, those security boxes are probably somewhere in the area of $2,000 or $3,000 a piece. But we could have bought a lot of security boxes with $42,500. It would have been a lot more than we need, because I don't think we need 238. I think we could get by with 5 or 6, as Montgomery County and others have done. And then finally, I mean, while I have the greatest respect for all the volunteers at Board of Judges and workers on election day, I've been working at polls long enough to know what happens on election day. And these people are not going to have the opportunity to be able to watch that box. It's just a simple fact. Even if you have enough workers, which we don't, we're not going to have people that can watch that box appropriately. And unfortunately, and I'm not saying I have any evidence that this happened anywhere around here, but sometimes there are security issues. I mean, the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District just indicted a Board of Elections judge last week for ballot stuffing, for something somewhat similar to this. So I really have a concern. I mean, I want everybody to have a vote. They have their stamps. We have the ability to either join in that Supreme Court case or wait and see what that Supreme Court case says or get some other direction. But I just feel very, very strongly that 200 and however many boxes that aren't properly secured is not the answer. Thanks.
Well, you've made a good case, Jim. I think you've made your case. On the matter of the administrative meetings that take place, obviously when the board decides policy, the Sunshine Act requires that we have a public meeting. We do a public meeting. There are internal meetings that take place amongst the administration. They involve people from the county to put into place the policies of the Board of Elections and make decisions. For instance, about the buying of the boxes. We're not going to have a public meeting where we have vendors come in and describe the boxes and whether they're available or not. So there are meetings, and obviously the members of the Board of Elections are invited to those meetings to participate in those meetings. So it's not a partisan thing. The Board of Elections can participate and observe, and then the staff of the county goes off and takes actions to implement the things that the board has set as policy or the tasks that are required to be done. So I don't think there's any more debate in this issue, the motion that's on the floor. So I'll call a question. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
So the motion carries 2-1. I know we have a ton of public comment to get to. I'm in the office here and I can see things up on the screen. Is there any other business we need to do before we get to that?
I have done.
Okay.
I believe there may be a polling place change that we need to consider.
Yes, I have the 2 emergency changes.
Okay, Jim, go ahead. This is, for those of you at home, this is Jim Savage by telephone, the director of the machine warehouse.
Upper Darby, 1st Ward, 3rd Precinct, and Upper Darby, 1st Ward, 6th Precinct were scheduled to vote at Anthony's Restaurant, 4990 State Road in Drexel Hill. The 1st Ward, 3rd Precinct historically had voted there. The 1st Ward 6th Precinct was moved as part of the consolidation. When the delivery driver showed up yesterday, I guess, they said they were unable to host. So the proposal is to move Upper Darby 1-3 and Upper Darby 1-6 to the Drexel Brook Club, which already hosts Upper Darby 1st Ward 8th Precinct. That's the Drexel Brook Club, 4700 Drexel Brook Drive in Drexel Hill. I emailed the documentation to the members of the board prior to the meeting.
And Jim, so I can understand it's Anthony's Restaurant, and you had been in communication, or you're somebody, as part of from the board, had been in communication with them to confirm that they were going to be available as a polling place, and then we learned at the last minute, literally the last minute when the materials were delivered, that they had changed their mind apparently.
So they confirmed delivery of the equipment, I think like 2 days before we delivered it. And then when the moving company got there with the equipment, they said they were unable to host.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion then to relocate Upper Darby 1-3 and 1-6 to the Drexel Brook facility, which has already been inspected and complies with the code. Obviously, there's other precincts in that location. Is there a motion?
Yes, Jerry, so moved.
Second?
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There being none, the motion carries.
Anybody else?
That's
have-
just-
Boys, like what a hard
Thank you. I'd like to thank the folks at the Drexel Book Club for stepping up with very little notice. And just before I close, just to let everybody know, we have more than 300 precincts have their equipment already delivered or on the trucks being delivered. By the end of the day, that number will be close to 400.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, Maureen, you had something.
Yes, thank you. I am asking that the board, we are having a very fluid situation with finding and appointing board workers to fill where vacancies exist. As we typically have done, which is provided in the election code, is emergency appointment beginning 5 days before the election. Typically, the board has given the Bureau the authority to make those appointments. I would ask for that authority from you. And also, there is a group of workers who are helping us with contacting the boards and dealing with them and finding where the vacancies are going to be for June 2nd. They are keeping a list of people who are volunteering, and they'll fill in those vacancies where we can. I'm asking that if we just put together a spreadsheet of those vacancies and who has filled them, and we'll release that to both party chairs rather than individual appointment letters, just because of the volume of what we're seeing. So we'll release that over the weekend to both party chairs as to where we are and update it Monday and again Tuesday morning.
Lorene, would it be appropriate to also post that publicly, just so the public can be familiar with the identity of poll workers? I believe that's otherwise public information in a sense. I would defer to you on that, though.
If the board deems it to be appropriate, we could make that spreadsheet. It would just be a list of names. I don't feel comfortable putting people's addresses there, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So we can put down who are the volunteers and what positions they're being applied to, but we will definitely make them available also to both party chairmen so that they're aware, as they're the local voices for the towns. We want to defer and make sure that they're informed as to what we're doing.
Yeah, I think obviously if somebody made a Sunshine Act request for the names of the board, we would produce it to them. But given the circumstance, we can publish it.
Okay.
It's just the names on the website. We don't want people being called and harassed. Obviously,
Right.
If you have a reason to contact these people, you are somebody in the neighborhood and you will know them and know where to find them.
Okay.
But just without getting into people's personal information. So as I understand it, Ms. Hagan has requested two things. One is the motion that we pass every year authorizing her to make the temporary appointments as provided for by the statute. And secondly, because we anticipate a greater volume as well as all the other tasks that have to be done. In the past, everybody should write a separate letter for each appointment, and there might be 30 letters or 50 letters, some number like that. But she's going to write one letter and saying the following are appointed, and it will have the information, who's appointed to which position in which precinct, and then identifying information for the individual.
Yes.
Which I think is fine to use one big letter as opposed to whatever the number will be of individual smaller letters. So if we could have a motion to that effect.
So moved.
I would second that. I do have a question or two if I could.
Sure.
And Lorraine, I don't mean this in any bad way or anything, because I get emails from you at 11 o'clock at night, so I know you're in there working your self to death. But I got a couple calls from some officials who said they haven't been contacted at all about changes of polling places yet, or who's going to show up, or what's happening. I'm assuming that's just all related to the the overwhelming amount of work. And I guess what I'm a little concerned with is, are we going to end up having places where they're like, how do we know people are not coming as opposed to are coming, is my question.
As far as the poll workers, you mentioned notification of change of polling sites. That would not be within the Bureau of Elections jurisdiction. So I can't speak to that matter. Those notices, I believe, would come out of voter registration. But as far as the poll workers go, sorry, I'm not in view. As far as the notices to the poll workers go, we have, my understanding is the offices that are handling the calls have been reaching out to anyone that has been on our boards that have given us either an email or a phone number in the past, which they've been reaching them, talking to them. So if they say they have not received any calls or received any emails, if you or they would reach out to us and let us know, because they were supposed to have been called.
Okay.
As far as notice, we did mail a letter on Saturday to the boards telling them about the supply pickup, which will be on Saturday from 9 to 2. So that maybe this is a time to share it with everyone as well. So if I can piggyback on your questions, Jim, I'll answer it. Sure. And also expand for the board workers that the supply pickup will be at the courthouse rather than coming in as we've done traditionally. It'll be a drive-through. So you'll come through the garage and a map was sent to each of the poll workers. So it'll be 9 to 2. You'll come in, come up to the garage. There'll be a team of people. They'll collect the signature of the poll worker who's picking up the supplies. And we will then, if you open your trunk or leave your back door unlocked, we'll put the supplies inside that they would traditionally get, the blue registration bag, the white supply box for them to take to the precinct on election day. Same thing in reverse on election night. They'll come back to media and we'll take the supplies at the car. So there will be less face-to-face and interaction in the building with people. So they should have received that. Also, there was, if we had gotten an email from the poll workers, that was sent out electronically to each of them that would include the letter. It also spoke to the fact that there's training videos. Voting Machine Warehouse did a video of the caddy and how to manage that, pack it, unpack it. And then myself and voter registration did a video as well. That's on our website. So that would go to the county website, go to the Bureau of Elections page, and under the District Election Board tab that are where those videos are for training. We did go through how to set up the precinct. We talked about the best practices for COVID protocol for the poll workers as well for the voters. We went through the new scenarios as far as how to process voters as paper ballot is new to everyone. This is a very unique first launch of the use of the paper ballot. So we did talk about that, show examples of what to do with spoiling a ballot if someone needs to have a new ballot because they made a mistake on the ballot they were using on election day. We demonstrated putting up the touch writer and not only opening it for the poll worker, but the what the poll worker will do to set the machine up for the voter if indeed they do need to use that equipment. It is there for people who need to use it, although we would like to strongly have as many people who are able to use the ballots just for public safety, health reasons. But the touch writer is there for access for anyone who needs it for the language or different disabilities of voters. So those videos are there. And if they watch the video, there is a short survey afterwards. If they, I believe it's 4 questions, if they answer 2 of the 4 questions correct, they'll be paid for the training. So we're trying to make sure that that information is out there. Also to reassure the poll workers, inside the white supply box will be I think it's about a 35 page tutorial on setting up and using the touch writer and the ballot box. So if you've watched the video ahead of time, and then on election day when you're on the spot, if you have a moment of concern, you'll have a tutorial that is in writing with you that you can see with diagrams and all how to set it up and how to manage that. So we understand everybody's going to be learning this on the day. So we wanted to make sure not only did you have prior notice of the equipment, but then how to do it on election day. There'll be the black and clear bag that poll workers who have served previously are used to seeing with their cartridges. That's now going to be inside the white supply box. And that will include various information that'll be important for the judge of elections to have, both also the information for the return of the supplies, as well as keys and the other instructions. So that is something they should look for inside of the white bag. just a point, I still am getting questions on this, that the poll workers no longer will you have any of these absentees or write-in ballots. I had a poll worker call yesterday. I was talking to her late last night, and she was concerned. She thought her share of the 80,000 was something she was going to have to start opening at 8 o'clock. I assured her the Act 77 changed that. They're no longer sent to the precinct. That will be the Bureau of Elections' responsibility to keep those ballots in safe condition as they are under lock and key in a secluded room. But they will be opened and counted publicly, but they will not be in the precinct. So you will not have to open those or count those at the close of election day. If poll workers are unable to pick up on Saturday, they are still able to come and pick up on Monday. The only thing is, as is typically, there will not be access to the garage for pickup. And so you could come to the door, call ahead. We'll make arrangements to meet you at the front door of the government center to give you your supplies. But call us so we can set all that up in motion for you.
Please try to come Saturday.
Strongly suggest Saturday because I think it'll be a much better process for you in the fact that we'll have teams of people there to just much like we've been supporting our local restaurants these days, and they come out with your bag and put it right in the back seat for you. We'll be doing the same with your election supplies. But we just, we don't want you to think if you're working. I had a gentleman call and said he'd miss a day pay if he had to pick it up on Saturday. We will be accommodating to people where we can. What else? I think that was everything I wanted to touch base. I hope I answered the questions and gave you some perspective on those issues and items we're doing, Jim, and hope that helps. I've seen a number of questions from poll workers on the email here. So I will, if you follow up with your email on this public comment with a phone number, I'll be sure to call you back today, but hopefully this information alleviates some of those concerns and questions.
Thanks, Lorraine.
Anything else from the board?
No.
All right, Lorraine, why don't we
Okay.
take a glass of water. We're
Sorry.
going to do a lot of talking as you read the public comments, and we'll go to the public comment.
Jerry, do we need to make the motions? Do we need to make those two motions? Did we make them?
So we made a motion. It was seconded.
Yeah, there was a
Is it?
Oh, you're right.
the emergency?
Well, let's just take a vote. I actually can't remember if we took a vote.
Okay. Sorry.
So
Well,
the motion has been made and seconded to authorize the chief clerk of the Bureau of Elections to issue the emergency appointments, and secondly, to permit her to, rather than write individual letters to each appointee, to write a group letter listing all the names. So the motion made and seconded. We'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? There being none, the motion carries. Okay, so we have finished our agenda items, and we're going to turn to public comment.
Okay, we have a question on.
And I'll say this, my eyes aren't that great, but I could see a lot of them are very similar. So Lorraine may not read them all if the question's already been read once. We have a lot of poll workers asking the same question, et cetera. So, but go ahead, Lorraine.
Yes. So the first one here is from a Pat Williams. If I understand your question, you followed it up and that you have now noticed that you're receiving your ballot today in the mail. But if I'm not understanding that, please email back and I'll work directly with you offline. Another question here is, that has been up, from Chris Jackson stating that they have not received their ballot yet either. It was mailed. They gave us the mail to date. So again, I will work off of email or if you want to call, I'll follow up on that question directly. So I don't want you to think I'm ignoring your email, but we'll do that after the meeting. Elizabeth Mellon has stated concern about voting by provisional. They'll be at the precinct on election day. And if you have requested an absentee or mail-in ballot, that is what you will utilize on election day. If you decide to go to the precinct, you would be given that provisional ballot to vote. The judge of elections, the provisional process remains the same in that you have to give the voter their ballot, the secrecy envelope and the affirmation envelope. Both the voter and the board have parts on the affirmation envelope which must be executed. And if I'm saying anything wrong, please feel free to jump in. Provisionals are outside my wheelhouse to some degree. Or if Crystal is
exactly
on,
right. The only sort of qualification I would add is that if the poll book indicates that you have been mailed a mail-in or an absentee ballot, and the county has received that mail-in or absentee ballot back from you, you will not be entitled to vote provisionally. However, if it just says you were mailed the mail-in or absentee ballot, doesn't indicate that the county received it back from you yet, those voters will be entitled to vote provisionally. And then what will happen is afterwards, they'll compare what provisional ballots we have to the mail-in and absentee ballots that have been received back. And, you know, in the event that somebody was mailed a mail-in ballot but never returned it and voted provisionally, then assuming the provisional ballot is otherwise in order, that would presumably be counted.
All right, thank you. The next question we have is from Mark McGann. He is a poll worker, and he had questions about the processes. I hope what I spoke to helps understand that a little more clearly. Again, I will reach out directly to you via the email. If you want to send a second email, including your phone number, I'll give you a call as soon as we're done with the meeting here. But I think we went over a lot of the items for the poll workers, but if there's something more, we'll circle back to you. I have a email from Alara Fedorowicz. I apologize for misstating that. It says, will there be a drop-off option for mail-in ballots if they can't be mailed by 8 p.m. on Tuesday? As the law currently stands, as the chairman has stated, that if the law remains as it is currently, the voted ballot must physically be received either in the Bureau of Elections or in the precinct experience drop box for the mail-in or absentee ballot by 8 p.m. on Tuesday. If the law changes, as there are court cases that have been discussed previously in this meeting, then that could change. But as of this moment, the law is that it must physically be received by 8 p.m. on Tuesday, not postmarked by 8 p.m. on Tuesday.
To answer her question, there are Dropbox options as we've discussed at length.
Yeah, I think the thing is the way the email was written, it said if it can't be mailed by Tuesday. The distinction is it's not mailed by Tuesday, it's we have to receive it by Tuesday. And there are these Dropbox options, obviously.
Okay, and there's also a clarification on that the Bureau of Elections website under the vote by mail options. There is an opportunity and for if a voter has a disability or an illness that would keep them from being able to cast their own ballot, to return their ballot, they may designate a person and submit that form. They can fax that form ahead of time, mail it in to us, and then that person has been authorized under that state rule that they can bring that ballot in for someone or now to the precinct, that absentee or by mail ballot. But the designation of agent form, which you can find on the Bureau of Elections website, must be enforced first before the delivery can be made or be brought with the person when they personally hand deliver that. Do not include that inside the envelope. Elizabeth Mellon, we have a question from her. We have not discussed how we are picking up our materials, so we have now discussed that. I don't have paperwork to allow me to pick up the materials for my other judges in my ward. If you come in with either a statement from them, that is fine, or if you are, we would just need your signature and your phone number. If you're picking up for another board, we don't have that affidavit because with the drive-by, that's going to be a little more difficult to collect those forms, but we'll just collect next to your signature your phone number. So if you're picking up for Judge A and they forget that you said you were going to pick up for them as well as your materials, we'll be able to circle back between the two judges to make sure everybody knows who has the materials. Ms. Mellon also asks, why is the documentation, isn't it online? And as I said, the training is online. We certainly could post the letter that we sent out to the board members, both electronically and in the mail. If that helps, we'll put that on the district election board page along with the training, so people will have that map. Thank you, Ms. Mellon, for making that suggestion. We also have an email comments from Tom McGarrigle, Chairman of the Republican Party for Delaware County.
Yeah, why don't you read Mr. McGarry? We read it in its entirety.
Okay.
I'll respond to the question.
Okay. It says, as a former county council chairman, state senator, and current Delaware County Republican Party chair, I'm extremely concerned about the upcoming primary elections. I understand we are in unprecedented times, but some of the procedures that have been proposed for this primary are just plain ridiculous and give us no confidence that ballot integrity is being focused upon. A few introductory points first. Why is county council announcing election procedures prior to an election board meeting? Was there a meeting I missed? The election board is the governing body responsible for election issues, not council. For them to publicly announce controversial issues like poll consolidation and roving vans to pick up absentee ballots prior to your even discussing the same is concerning, to say the least. Who is making these decisions? Were there separate meetings that were not publicized? The perception that our elections are secure and fair is fundamental to our republic, and you have allowed this council to compromise that by making edicts, and you're just following them. Second, throughout this process, the Election Bureau has reached out to party chairs asking us to contact the official poll workers. A small civics lesson. Once a judge of elections, majority inspector, minority inspector, or machine operator is elected or appointed, they are county officials. This is your people. They are elected county officials and they answer to you, not to me as party chair, and you need to officially communicate with them. The fact that you just reached out to them for poll training yesterday, May 27th, is flat out incompetent. Additionally, the staffing in the election office is the responsibility of county council and yourselves, and the fact that 2 weeks before the election, elected council people and party officials were counting, processing absentee ballots is a joke. No elected official should be near those ballots. The optics are horrible. This is Management 101, and should I say Mismanagement 101. You know the primary was not going to be postponed further. The county should have immediately repurposed all called back to the county workers that were furloughed and got the job done. There is zero communication to your constituents and maximum confusion countywide. This process has been an abject failure from transparency to communication, and county council should own up to their errors and stop making excuses. Now to the main issue. I understand that the virus has made conducting an election a very challenging undertaking, but the option of mobile ballot boxes and vans does not solve your problems. It only creates more. Who is driving the vans? Who is picking up the ballots? Who is checking to see if the person dropping off the ballot is the person who filled it out? For the boxes, are they in the polling places? Is there one person responsible for each precinct, or is it a combined board? The remedy to this issue is in court, like Montgomery County has done. Go to court and ask for the extension of time for the ballots to be counted. The Republican Party may even join you.
To the extent, first of all, thank you, Mr. McGonigal. You pointed out your public service, which has been extraordinary. And I also thank you for raising your concerns. We have public comment here because we do look for insight, and you, sir, obviously have had extensive experience in the political arena, and we are always willing to listen to you, and where we agree with you, we will agree with you, and where we don't, we will use our discretion to apply the laws in the way that we think is appropriate. Your comments directed to the county council, they can address those themselves. I will say this, though, that you are correct. I have seen suggestions made by members of county council, ideas that were floated and considered in their attempts to be constructive and helpful. And some of those have been put into effect, some of them haven't. Part of your comments were about the idea that was discussed the other day in the newspaper of some kind of mobile collection, and that's not going to happen. You are also correct that it is the Board of Election who has the statutory authority to set policy about how the election is conducted, and whether county council is suggesting things or floating ideas, ultimately, it does come down to Mr. Byrne, Ms. Lunkheimer, and myself to take a vote and determine whether or not something's going to happen. We saw that process take place here today. Your concern about the integrity of the ballots in the polling places and as to who's in charge, the election code makes clear the judge of elections is in charge of the polling place, and the judge of elections is responsible for the activity there. So to answer your question in that regard, it would be the judge of elections. As the last point I want to address is when you talk about the county party chairs and the Board of Elections communications with the political parties. It has been certainly the practice of this county in my time on the Board of Elections that we recognize that there are certain partners that the Board of Elections works with, namely the political parties, the League of Women Voters, and other civic groups. The Board of Elections is three persons, and the Bureau of Elections and the registration office and the machine warehouse is, again, just a handful of persons. And to conduct an election that takes place across this county is a massive undertaking. And we have always, at the Board of Elections, worked with the political parties and with others in the community, like the League of Women Voters, to help us recruit volunteers, to help us recruit poll workers, to help us make sure polling places are staffed. It has been the practice here for as long as I can remember that when Ms. Hagan or persons on her staff go through the list of poll workers and identify vacancies, that we reach out to people in the local communities, oftentimes through the political parties. It's been our experience that finding persons who are interested in taking an active role in the political process is often easier when somebody in the local community who is already aware of others who are active and interested is alerted to the fact that we're looking for people and helps us to recruit and find people. So I think what was done this year with regard to reaching out to the political parties and other community groups is no different than what's historically been done. Perhaps it was done on a little bit greater scale because there was, I think, more significant need and a little bit of a different need this year than there has been in the past. But it's always been our practice, and we had a good working relationship with both of the political parties and with a lot of other community groups for a long time. And I know through the course of this spring, there have been a number of things which I thought were really very nice, if you will, for just lack of a better word, where when there was discussion about where to relocate polling places within certain towns, in many, many towns, it was reported to me that the Republican chair, the Democratic chair spoke to each other and agreed this is a viable plan. And, as much as we can read about elected officials who don't get along, and as much as the political parties may oppose or disagree with the ideas and the thoughts of the other party, frankly, it made me feel good to see the chairs of two different parties working together to solve problems and to help us figure out where the best place to have polling places were and to have an election. So I do hope we can continue to work in a constructive manner with others in the community who have an interest in conducting the election, because frankly, we can't do it without you. And we do appreciate your thoughts, whether you're writing into us here or we had you down and we had your cohort, Ms. Guiney, down to take a look at equipment and to meet with us before the COVID crisis. I think it is important that we receive your thoughts and your inputs, because you obviously have a lot of experience and interest in helping us to have a fair election. So thank you for your comments. Any others?
Nope, that's all I have on the emails.
All right. Does anybody else have anything before we adjourn?
This is Manley. I have two points of information, I would say. One is that I don't believe it's been mentioned, but for those who are on the call and are going to be poll workers, there will be training calls for poll workers on Sunday at 2 different times. That information is being communicated to poll workers so that they are aware of those calls. I would certainly encourage everybody who's a poll worker to participate in those additional training calls, because they will be dealing with some last minute issues. We'll obviously taking account of any legal developments that would transpire in the interim. And, obviously we're also dealing with a moving target in terms of the COVID situation and those types of issues. And we want to make sure that you have the latest and most up-to-date information about issues of that sort as well. So you'll be on the lookout and see if if you can participate at all possibly in those calls and you're a poll worker, please do. Second of all, I would ask that, or I would just want to inform everyone, we are in the process of developing a written guidance on the process for the pre-canvass and canvass of mail-in and absentee ballots. This is new because in the past there weren't mail-in ballots, and absentee ballots were canvassed or opened and reviewed at the local polling places. Now that's done at the Board of Elections, and the process needs to be developed just administratively for how that will happen. So we're in the process of finalizing that, and as soon as it's available, my recommendation would be to provide it to the party chairs, the candidates, and to the post it publicly on the website so everybody can see what the pre-canvass and canvass process will be for mail-in ballots. I also understand, I don't know if we're still streaming, but apparently the folks at the Board of Elections may have lost their connection.
They have, and Jerry just called me. Apparently the power went out. I think on the Facebook screen live, he looks frozen. But Jerry, I don't know if you can still hear the meeting. I have him on the cell phone next to me.
I can hear you through the speaker. And yeah, just the light's blinked here for a minute, so we have to reboot all the computers, and it'll take a couple minutes to come up. So I thought I'd just listen in by the phone chain here, and we're almost done.
And Manley and Jim, you could hear him?
Yes, I can hear him. Sure.
Mm-hmm. I think Manley was just at the very end, he was just talking about the fact that there will be canvass, an outline of what will happen during the canvassing that will be publicly available.
Okay, great.
I thought he just got bored with you, Manley.
It wouldn't have been the first time someone did that.
Jerry, I think we're at the end. I don't know, Jim, if you had any other comments, or Manley did.
No, thank you.
I think we're at the end. So to the extent that everybody can hear you, just not see you through my phone, do you want to call the meeting?
Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to say 2 things. One, I wanted to again thank all the people that are making extraordinary efforts on the staff in our 3 offices. A lot of people from other county departments who have been thrown into this over the last week or so to lend a hand. A lot of volunteers who have stepped up and tried to help with organizing this recruiting and so forth. We're indebted to you, and we thank you. And then the last comment is just to the public. Tuesday's election day. Please be reasonable, be thoughtful, be respectful. Recognize that it's not the ordinary election day. It's different. Procedures are going to be different. It's new. It's new because it's new equipment. It's new because of COVID. People have worked hard. They're doing their best. And I ask you to please just be thoughtful and be respectful. And it may take a little longer to vote than normal, but know that a lot of people are working hard and doing their best to make the experience the best that it can be for you. And there will probably be some dissatisfaction. I apologize in advance for that, but we are working hard and doing what we can in a difficult circumstance. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are adjourned. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you.
Thank- Good day.